We're on Rosh Chodesh Cheshvan, the last day of Tishrei, and I want to share with you a interesting mahalach I have in Hallel. I've been speaking about Hallel for the past couple of weeks, and to the shirim, and I had an interesting mahalach that was actually in Scottish last night. Baruch Hashem, my wife had a refuah shlema. We went to the hospital on Thursday, and we were zochet to see the surgeon who performed the operation. When I asked him, "Can you see my wife?" he said, "No." So we did some ishtadlus to try to pull strings, which didn't work. And then in the end, he saw her. So who knows? But Baruch Hashem, my wife was feeling much better, and is feeling much better. As I was going to the hospital, I felt this incredibly strong pain in my mouth, right? And you want to know what I mean by incredibly strong pain? When I had meningitis, which is potentially lethal infection of the brain. So Rav Zalman Nechemia Goldberg said after I got better, I could make Birkas HaGomel. In any event, so after having meningitis the whole night and not sleeping and feel like having a screwdriver going through my head, I daven chakras. And then I collapsed in front of Dr. Leibowitz's door in Be'akov. And I told him what happened. He said, "It's not physically possible to daven chakras if you have meningitis. It's impossible." I said, "Okay." So I did it. But this pain was worse than that. Like, if you ever felt like your tooth is like, you have like saws going in all directions, like all around your tooth. That's kind of what it felt. So I went to a dentist in another part of Eretz Yisrael I go to, and he couldn't figure out what it was. So he sent me to a dentist like 5 minutes away from my house, Dr. Murray Bank. And Baruch Hashem, he detected it was a root canal. And for the past 2 nights at 12:30 a.m., he's been doing the treatment, which when his schedule freed up. And anyway, the first night was pretty painful doing the treatment. Last night was a little bit less painful. But as I was sitting in the dental chair, and he was like kind of, root canal is, I'm not exactly sure what it is, but you're cleaning out the canals of the tooth. It was like going through, just kept taking x-rays and going through the tooth and cleaning out infection. Exactly what it was, I don't know, but it was an experience. I figured like this is a good time to think about Hallel, because over Ben Zmanim, I started to write a parish, praying with Joy 6 on Hallel. And I want to share with you this mahalach that I have in Ma'ashiv L'Hashem, right? When you think about Ma'ashiv L'Hashem, Kol Sing V'lai, so what's the question? What's the answer, right? What can you give to Hashem? You give a lot to Hashem. You can do Torah, do mitzvahs, tefillah, all these things, seemingly. Why is that not considered giving to Hashem? And what's the answer? Kos Yishuos Esor, right? If you can't really give to Hashem, so then how are we answering? I'll pick up the cup, not this one, this is orange juice, but I'll pick up Kos Yishuos Esor B'Shem Hashem Akra, right? So what's going on there? I believe the pshat is like this. And okay, I can't say this part, so I won't, but I'll say it in a different way. Whenever if a person does a really big favor to somebody, he's almost inevitably getting something back. Somebody in the past week did an incredibly big favor for me. It was like something that would normally have cost $1,300, $1,400. He says, "I'm doing it for you for free." That was a nice favor, but he felt good afterwards, and he knows that now I owe him one a little bit, whatever. By a person, there's almost no such thing as a free gift, right? In what is it called? Latin, it's called sin quo pro. Am I pronouncing it right? Sin quo pro means that basically you scratch my back, I'll scratch your back. And in Hebrew we call it tovus hana. In tovus hana, mum and la mum, and we have a machlokas, but everyone agrees it's something, right? If I do something for you, then you feel a certain amount of indebtedness to do something back for me, right? That's by a person, right? What about by Hashem? Right? Oh, there is one thing. There is chesed shel emes, right? Chesed shel emes when you do for a dead person. But even when you're doing chesed for a dead person, you're saying, let's look around at the Yorshim. Maybe they'll donate a building for our kollel, or maybe they'll dedicate my next sefer, right? There's really no such thing, kemat, in this world as the chesed shel emes, right? There's like levels, it's partial, chesed shel emes, but not complete. Okay. So that's as far as people go. But by Hashem, there's no such thing as tovos hana by Hashem. Yeah? Sin quo pro, right? God, if I do you a favor, maybe you'll do me a favor. If I scratch your back, you'll scratch my head, but Hashem has no back, So there's not much you could do, right? There is a back, by the way, to Ab and Ima. It fell down by the Shvir Sekalim. He knows what I'm talking about. You can ask Adam. But the point is like this. The point is that you can't really do. So that's the question. Ma Shiv Hashem Kol Semulai, right? And what's the answer? The answer is that there is an answer. There's something you can do for Hashem. What happens? Hashem, if you go to the Hallel, the whole Mahalach of Hallel is Hashem brings, or at least he brought David HaMelech many times and other great tzaddikim to near death, and he saved them, right? And that's Kosi Shosasah, right? HaKadosh Baruch Hu brought these great tzaddikim to a matzav of like very, very great sakana, right? Yasor Yisrani Ka, Ulamavis Lo Nisani. They came very, very close to death, but not quite there, like being in Brazil with some people having their hands around your neck, choking, Yasor Yisrani Ka, Ulamavis Lo Nisani. Why? Because Hashem wants you to thank Him publicly, and then you're bringing Kvod Shamayim. And that is giving. Hashem considers that giving to Hashem. It's Dafka, you want to have some food? Yeah. Dafka Kos, and this, by the way, is hot drinks, coffee, everyone. Dafka Kos Yeshua says so, not one. Many, many Yeshuas, right? And this one, well, it's not getting close to Hashem. You're doing something for Hashem. You're publicizing to other people His chesed and His hashgacha, right? And you see, someone once told me, if you look in David HaMelech's life, he went from one thing to the next, Like before the first star is over, the second one started already. And this is how I felt. I was going to the hospital. It was our last appointment with the surgeon. Hopefully everything was fine. Baruch Hashem, it was takin. The biopsy was clean. No, Baruch Hashem, it was what they call it. It was sharir. It was not cancerous. But the point is, just as I was coming out of one, Hashem throws me into another with this pain, which I felt like there was like a nuclear bomb going on inside my tooth, blowing up, but had nowhere to go. I don't wish that on anybody. So the point is like this. The point is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu constantly brings us to challenges. Again, it doesn't have to be so extreme. You don't have to have such, like I gave a shir once, thank Hashem without getting run over by a car. You can thank Hashem just for waking up in the morning, meeting on time to Koilel, getting to the Rosh Chodesh Surah. And so for some people, that's a nace to get out of bed, for some yeshiva bachram. I told you I was the vecker for one day in Taras Moshe. They made me the vecker for one day. And when a guy didn't get out of bed, I poured a bucket of cold water over his head. And then that didn't work. I turned over the bed. So I was fired after one day. But, for some people, getting out of bed is a miracle. You can thank Hashem for that. And that's Kos Yeshuos. So why is it plural? Because when you thank Hashem for one Yeshua, you have to thank Him for Hashem all the Yeshuas. Everything He does for us all the time. Because we don't get inspired so often to thank Hashem. Once in a while, like Hashem throws us a real difficult nisyon, and we come out of it, and we feel great thanks to Hashem. We make a Sudas Hodah, and then we can thank the Borei Olam. That's Kos Yeshuos. And just to finish off, right? I never understood this. It's a Piliyat Suma, right? Maybe Oav can explain this to me. Yoker be'enei Hashem ha'mavsel ha'chasidav. It's a Pella. Right? Hashem wants people to die. Rabbi Israel Tauber Zatzal once said, he said, if every single Jew could be over on every single Aver in the Torah, except for Gimel Averas Chamuros, right? Just for save 1 second of one Jew's life, we'd have to do it. So why Yakar B'nei Hashem Amavsei Chasidav? It's a Pella. Oh, no? It's a Pella.
I don't know if Yakar means that Hashem wants them to die.
No, but it's precious. So why is it precious?
It's precious.
Right, why? Yeah. So I don't think it's talking about the death. I don't think so. You could learn like that. I think what it means is that Hashem brings the tzaddik right to that point, right before you're about to die. With the hands around the neck. Now, I'm not a tzaddik, but I didn't listen to my wife. That fateful morning in Rio de Janeiro, when I wanted to go tovel in the beautiful waters of Rio, Brazil, the beach, which is, I think, 7 beautiful wonders of the world. So my wife said, it's a little bit dangerous here in Rio to go to the beach early in the morning. I didn't listen. And she said, there's some bandits around. I said, I grew up and, I used to train in the Bronx and middle of Harlem. I'm not so worried. Adkan Divrei Tipshus. Anyway, so it was a little bit, my fault for not listening to my wife. Anyone who doesn't listen to wife, this is definitely, it's Midi the Alma and Midi Shemaya and everything else. So the Gemara says, if your wife is short, bend down and listen to what she says. Right? Better to bend down to her than to these guys. But the point is, Hashem brought me like within 1 millimeter, I believe, or however, another minute. Right? What happened? Right? It was at least 2 minutes being choked without air, and like it was starting to get slow, and I couldn't and like things were starting to shut down. I'm like, I'm gonna die, Wow. And then suddenly it was in Elul. Suddenly I remembered a shmuz I had heard from Elchanan Fishman about the story with the Brisker Rav of Einol Movado, and as soon as that story came into my head, they ran away, and they screamed, "Mafia of Brazil!" I went back, by the way, to the beach. I made the bracha of Shatzli Neis Makom Hazeh. It was 2 or 3 years, 4 years ago. It was before Corona, right? How can you go? The reason I went early in the morning is because the people in Rio, they can't afford clothing, right? So they go like in very scantily clothed garments. Maybe Yavin. But Hashem made a nace for me in the middle of I don't know when we went, which was the summer. It started pouring and everybody left the beach. So I went back to the beach and I made Sha'asli Nace for Makom Hazeh, where I was almost choked to death. In any event, Hashem brings people 1 millimeter, or a minute away from death. Right? I felt the death in my throat. What?
You guys, you were a Jew or was Tom?
No, they wanted money. In fact, while they were choking me, the guy was looking through my sister said, "No money, amigo." No, I was like, "Well, if you stop choking me, maybe I can talk to you." But politely. It's like very rude. Amigo, yeah. Well, at least they're calling me friend.
Friend, yeah.
I don't want to know what their enemies look like. But the point is that you see in the life of David HaMelech, right? First they think he's a mamzer, and then he becomes king, and then they're trying to kill him. Shaul's trying to kill him, and then his son is trying to kill him, and everyone's trying to kill him, and all the time near death, and then he's over on Eish Sish. All these things happening, right? Hashem's bringing him right to the edge, right to that point of death. Yasoy is trying to call him right? And it's all in order to misaper Hashem. Misaper to say over Hashem's miraculous manhaga, his miraculous behavior with the Jewish people, right? And that's why we start by saying, about talking about in Hallel, right? His greatness, his infinite greatness, he's above time, he's above space. Mitzrayim, Kriyas Yamsuf, Har Sinai. We talk about Hashem's general nisim, his miraculous interaction with Klal Yisrael, and then we go to a personal level, how Hashem deals with us. So again, I don't wish these experiences on anyone. I called up yesterday when I was in the dentist office, one of my friends in Chutz La'aretz, the Tom. He said, "Another thing?" I was like, "What's going on here?" So I said, "Look, I basically just gave up. Hashem wants me to thank Hashem for things which bad, so it just gives me opportunities. But I offer the possibility of doing it for good things, So as I would prefer. But we don't have a choice in this matter. As Ramosh Shapiro once told me, he said, we don't ask for challenges, but don't be mevater even on one of them. So, with that, when we say Ma'ashiv Hashem, we really is something to give back to Hashem. And the more that a person is zoiche to be marbek kvod shemayim, again, you don't have to get choked on the beaches of Brazil or other experiences that I've had, to do that, right? Or any person who was in those experiences, right? A person can marbek kvod shemayim in other ways, right? In any way, that's considered giving back to Hashem. HaKadosh Baruch Hu considers that, right, as Ma'ashiv Hashem called Kosi Shos, right? The ultimate way is to publicize to the whole world, yeah. And it was medayik that Halo Hashem is kol hagoyim shabuchu kol amim, even the non-Jews, even the non-Jews. David HaMelech, right? You go to any church in the world, and I'm not recommending that you should walk in there, but what are they doing? They're saying psalms, right? Saying psalms, right? And so David HaMelech's words are being used by the entire world, right, to sanctify Hashem's name. And this is really a big yisod, especially on Rosh Chodesh, when we say the Hallel, and we have a chance to, once again, to think about how Hashem interacts with our life and all the good things He does to us. We should be zoiche to thank Hashem without these tsaros, operations, or car accidents, or muggings, or what else? I don't know what else. Parnasa problems, shalom bayis, whatever it might be. A woman called me 2 nights ago. She said, "Please convince my son to give his wife again, So I'm like, so what's the problem? She told me. I said, this is like a normal marriage these days, like life is tough. People are going through hard times. One doctor told me in a certain neighborhood, right, over 50% of the people there are on psychiatric medicines, We're going through hard times. These are difficult times. But what people don't know is that everything that Hashem sends us is a test. Yeah, it's all a test, and especially marriage, that is the big test. That is the big test. Again, do I stay or do I go? That you have to have a rav, but we have to know that it's a test. It has to be on that backdrop and framework. And Baruch Hashem, right before Sukkot, I was they had a copy of Yedidya 2. Yedidya 2. It's in the second manuscript. No, it's not finished yet. It has 2 more manuscripts. But Mrs. Elbinger let me see the second draft. But really, that's what we're dealing with, like how to deal with difficult marriages, and come out alive, more or less. So this is food for thought for anybody who's having difficulties in their life, whatever they might be, right? Use these situations to recognize Hashem more, to turn to Hashem in tefillah. Rav Shlomo Brevda Zatzal told me after we went through many, many tzaros, my wife and I, in our first year of marriage, he said to me, come back tomorrow and have the answer to all your problems. Right? Come back tomorrow and have the answer. I come back next day. Does the answer to the problems is tefillah? I'm going to write you a tefillah and it's going to get better. Right? So I come back, and so he wrote me a tefillah, and Baruch Hashem, things got significantly better. Right? You can imagine what it was like then. But what? He wrote a tefillah, and it was published in my book Praying with Joy 1 and 2, and in Mizmor Soda. I published it. I have a card. Let me see if I have one with me. I don't have one with me, but it's around. Praying with Joy. And the basis of the tefillah is to ask Hashem for rachamim, right? To turn to Hashem for rachamim. And that's it. Because if you turn to Hashem with your own merits, right, you're basically it's not going to work. The Gra says, and it's in Mishlei Chaf Hey Tezvav. Take a look. Right? He says, Yaakov Avinu, Katati Mikol Chesed Mikol Emes. Right? Yaakov Avinu could ask for zchuyos. He had a lot of zchuyos, but we don't have enough zchuyos, right, for even 1 second of life. We have to ask for pure mercy. So this is what we should be doing, davening for mercy, that Hashem should not bring upon us difficult situations. Yesterday I had lunch, and I didn't realize that after root canal, you're not supposed to eat cold food. And I had like some cold cereal, and it was like 25 atomic bombs going off in my tooth at the same time. So that was like really, really intense. But Baruch Hashem, Yasoy Yisrani Ya'al Moslam Hasani, and I could say that Baruch Hashem, I'm grateful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu for taking me out of the tzara and for helping me recognize His hand in it. And we should all be zoiche to praise Hashem and thank Hashem in the calm ways. Amen.